Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's Daily Muppet, I am going to certainly rant quite a bit about the current state of affairs at United, as I'm extremely disappointed in the situation that's ongoing right now. And at the moment, I feel very strongly that, my confidence in everything is completely and utterly shaken with this club, and the reason for that is surprising. So I want to talk about why. I want to talk about the really bad that is going on at United right now this summer that wasn't supposed to. And I want to talk then, of course, because I am an optimist, about the things that I do know with regards to what is being done to turn it around, but it won't be this summer. And what's going to change the way that things are happening, but it won't be this summer. And if we can survive to the next summer, or if we will make mistakes that stop us from accomplishing that. So I'm going to go through all that and then touch on an enormous number of the latest rumors as well. So that's what we're going to cover in today's video, and probably more news will come to me as we're in this video, so I'll try to cover everything that I can. Today's video is once again sponsored by OneFootball. We've teamed up with OneFootball to help bring you the best in football news. If you're looking to keep up with everything going on these days, and it is more than ever and continues to grow, download the OneFootball app today for free on your iPhone or Android. Their easy-to-use app is clean and attractive. You can see the latest transfers, the top news curated for you, match scores live, streaming without subscription, and so much more, all built and personalized for your interests, your club, your team. Click the link in the description below today to download OneFootball and get all your football news, aside from the Muppetiers, of course, all in one place. All right, let's get into this. So here's what's amazing to me. It's talk of signings right now, of making signings right now that have completely ruined my confidence in the club and in this season. And I know that's dramatic, but it's the truth. Brighton was disappointing, but as I covered, there was reasons I felt that it's fine, it makes sense. We were going to struggle at times. Brighton's a good team. They did some clever things tactically to counter us. But it was the news that came around that made me feel almost hopeless about this season, but not just this season, unfortunately. More so next season and the seasons to follow. The one thing that we've done right, that United have done right in recent years, is they've not made new long-term signings of deadwood players. Not every signing has worked out, but they did work at the time under the manager that signed for them and made sense for the club. In the first summer, Dan James worked for the purpose that he had under Ole for a couple years and then was sold for a profit. Wan-Bissaka worked for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to fix the defense and for his style of play. Now it's a problem, but it was a marked improvement on the club and Wan-Bissaka was very good for Ole and his system for quite a long time. Harry Maguire, same thing, still here, still captain. Moving into the next year, Donny van de Beek was close to that, but that was partially misused, but he's still here and can still do something. Alex Telles was closer to that, but on a cheaper deal and has moved on, and that summer 2020 is a bit of the similarities. Sancho, Varane, Ronaldo. What we've not done, Cavani was signed on a 1 year, 1+1. Ahmad and Palestra were young youth. What we've not done is gone out and signed players like Rabiot and Arnautovic. Players who we know aren't good enough and who aren't going to get better just because they're little upgrades on what we have. That will be stuck around for a long time on high wages and won't really make the difference. So we just cleared everyone out, and I expect, all right, we'll have ups and downs this year, but what do you want this year? What do you want from this year, really? I've said this. Some people are saying, got a challenge now, and are trying to hope we get everybody to sign that. That's never going to happen. What you want this year is to build a really good team for the long run. You want to only sign top young prospects or guys like Eriksen, proven top talents who are on great deals for the club that aren't going to screw everything up. Rabiot, Arnautovic, which is dead now, and I'll talk about that in a minute, condemn United to mediocrity because you create a squad based on mediocrity. You do not sign mediocrity. You cannot sign mediocrity. And on top of that, it blocks the path for the youth. So you eliminate two potential avenues for success. You fill up the squad with mediocre players, and you also block the young players from coming through. And I've thought long and hard about it yesterday, and then I realized exactly why this is happening. And I remembered what I was told a while back that I may or may not have mentioned in one of these videos. I know I mentioned it in a smaller private video. There's no money next summer. There is no money next summer for Manchester United. It's not there right now. They're not saying next summer you get 100 million. That budget is not there at the moment. It's expected to be small. United are struggling with stock price. United are struggling with sponsors. United are struggling with commercial revenues. They have not improved things on the way that they would, and the overall world markets are difficult right now. Without Champions League next summer, United will likely spend under 50 million total. That is a reality that has to be faced next summer. We don't have huge wages coming off outside of Ronaldo's next summer. We don't have, which is a lot to be fair, but they've cleared a lot more this year and we're not seeing big spending. They don't have huge sales lined up. And there's no money next summer, and what's the problem? We do not right now have any recruitment structure in place this summer. If we miss the Champions League, we will not have money next summer. So they're forced to panic. So the targets are bad. Even if we get Frankie de Jong, these other signings are mistakes, more so even mistakes. But it's done out of sheer desperation to do something and get something out of this season. And the problem is it's exactly this. We have to get a result now mentality and activity that has consistently driven the club into the dumps. And I've used Klopp and Liverpool before as a good example because they're one of the few clubs that are not state funded that spend this kind of money. They didn't have the Abramovich money. They didn't have the oil money. They're the only other club that is decently self-sufficient. They don't rip money out. They have invested a little, but they're a decently self-sufficient club, and they built properly. And when Klopp came in, they built right. They didn't just throw a bunch of crappy players into there. They built right. They bought some really shrewd, high-potential youths and some really younger players like Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then they bought some very, very good senior players. And I'm not saying everything was perfect, but their recruitment was good. They didn't worry about the short-term results. They took the right, and they didn't get great short-term results, but they took the right actions to build a squad. It wasn't that deep, it wasn't that difficult, and it still isn't that deep. They simply put the right team together and then added to it with the right players. You could see that. You could see in the early years of Klopp, they had built a style. And that style was moving forward, and they had a way of playing, and it was a shallow squad, and it was very specific, and it wasn't perfect, but they put the right players in place, and then they added them one by one to build a really, really good team that has a lot of consistency. And they finished it off with top players, obviously. I'm not talking about they didn't spend. I'm talking about, you look at the blend of players they got, from Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold to players like Fabinho, Van Dijk, Allison. Like they spent big money to get the key players, and they didn't buy these mediocre players. They had a couple misses here and there, but they could afford it because they were so good already. Like Naby Keita didn't work out. But that again wasn't a purchase like Rabiot. That was a player who was expected to be very good. They didn't buy Rabiots. They didn't buy Arnautovic's. And that's what United cannot do. United have to operate the same. Klopp waited for Virgil van Dijk and said it's better to not sign anyone than panic, and they did that. Again, excellent young prospects and proven top-level players who aren't the wrong side of 30 and are not in the decline of their careers, the only strategy that allows you to succeed. I had hopes for this season, but little by way of expectations. I wasn't expecting us to win a bunch and do amazing. I was expecting that there was a chance we could get top 4, a good chance of winning the Europa League, and anything else is a bonus. But mostly I wanted proper football being learned and played and the core of a project coming together without the mistakes of the past. But Ten Hag is clearly under pressure for immediate performance, and that is not the way that it should be. I'm sorry, it shouldn't be. I know everybody's impatient, even the fans, but he should not be under pressure for immediate performance. Without a budget next summer, why do you see, again, these panic signings, if you follow this logic through, They have to sign players now. And people say, well, what happened? I thought we were signing Ten Hag to also get youth in, guys like Garner. But what's the problem? If we have no money next summer, guess who our signings next summer are? It's the youth. It's the youth players that are going out on loan. Those are the incomings next summer with no budget. That's who we have to look forward to with no budget. Their next summer signing, so they need to go play everywhere because they need as many minutes as possible. We can't use them and just give them a little minutes. They need a lot of development so that they can come in and be ready next season. Think about it for a second. Why is Ethan Laird leaving when they clearly want to sell Wan-Bissaka and they don't have a backup lined up? Well, I'll tell you what I found out over the weekend. They have rejected multiple offers for Wan-Bissaka. This logic doesn't make sense. They want Wan-Bissaka to leave, but they have to reject offers because they've let Ethan Laird go because they don't want to spend on a replacement because Ethan Laird is the replacement, but he's not ready yet. You see that? It's groups and it's planning on two completely different wavelengths because of being handicapped at the top. You've got to loan Laird out because he's Dalo's replacement next year. You can't let Wan-Bissaka leave yet because you have no money to buy a right back. So you're stuck with him. So you reject offers. So Laird has to come in next season. Potentially. You have to leave that potential there that Laird could come back next season and be the starter because you do not know right now if you have the money. That's the situation at United right now. And that's what I'm concerned about overall. That is entirely what I'm concerned about. And if I go back to the entire whole manager debate when I started these videos, all the way back in March and April about all of this, it was about experience. The biggest thing that could hurt Ten Hag in moving to a Premier League club and his experience as a coach is lack of experience. A big factor in hiring him that was briefed and stated like it was this big thing was about fitting into the modern model as a modern coach. What modern model? We don't have one. And that was always my biggest complaint and concern. Ten Hag did not have the experience to build this club. He did not build Ajax. He had one of the best support structures and youth development teams in all of Europe, if not the best. I mean, Ajax are a machine for it, and he was playing in a league, coaching in a league where you could get any talent you want from any other team, and they cannot compete with you. Today, this summer, he has full control of recruitment, and scouts, analysts, all of that, it's all being bypassed. They're gone. We know that. That's obvious. It's clear. You had the scouts leaving earlier in the year. I was just talking with people about this last night. They did not get sacked. They left because they didn't feel like they were being utilized. Now, I'll talk about this in a minute. I debated many times with people here how we cannot do another manager-focused recruitment model, and what you're seeing today is exactly what I mean. You're seeing the result of it. This is what happens when you go to a manager-focused recruitment model. It sucks. It has its good and it has its bad. Now, people will say, this is me attacking Ten Hag, and I want to tell you something right now. It's not at all. He's a brilliant coach. I've talked a lot about how I back him. I expect him to turn things around, but this is a huge mistake right now. This is not why you hired him. That's the point. This is not about blaming Ten Hag. This is not his area of expertise. This is not why you hire him. This is not what you do. This is not the coach you hire and then make him responsible for all your recruitment. That wasn't his job at Ajax, and he's never done it at a big club, and he has no Premier League experience. It's a travesty. It's setting him up to fail. It's totally inept. If you're going to hire Ten Hag for his strengths, what is he brilliant at? You use him as a modern coach with a modern recruitment setup. And if they were going to do it this way, they should have hired a different coach because they've essentially thrown Ten Hag to the dogs and said, you have to be in charge of what you don't know and what you don't have experience with and what you're not good at. It's absurd. I've already seen it in my last video. People said, well, you can't just put it on this board. You have to talk about Ten Hag because these are his targets and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a far cry from in the past. People told me. It's not Ten Hag. You got to back Ten Hag. Ten Hag's the best guy. You know, nobody agreed with me about the manager thing, and that's fine. I've turned around. I've changed my view. I think Ten Hag is the right coach for the club from a coaching standpoint. But my concern always came back to this is where the lack of experience matters. When people talk about PL experience and proven stuff, this is where it matters. If the club aren't going to support you, you've got to do it yourself, and he cannot because he does not have that experience yet. But again, I saw people saying that. Why aren't you blaming Ten Hag? Some of this has to be on Ten Hag. These are his names. They are. These are his targets. Marko Arnautovic was his target. That's a mistake. Rabiot's a target he really wants. That's a mistake. These names going out there are mistakes. Being stuck on Frankie de Jong all summer and ignoring Bissouma, Palhinha, Lamer, Kamara, that's on Ten Hag, and that's a mistake. However, it shouldn't be that way in the first place. It should never have come to this. That's a guarantee when you give managers full control that they will mess it up. You cannot do it. Ten Hag didn't even ask for full control. Supposedly there was a whole plan, but you gave him control with stipulations. That's the thing, with stipulations. If he had total control and the funds, he would have gotten Nunez, he would have gotten Frankie de Jong, and it would be a bit of a different situation. But you didn't. So you gave a coach control without full control, one who doesn't have the experience. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Again, it can sound like I'm coming off like it's all on Ten Hag, and that's what people wanted me to say apparently from the comments of the last video, but it's not. And that's not what I'm saying, and I won't say that. It's a simple fact of, I have said many times, you cannot do a coach model, a coach recruitment model. You cannot do this manager-oriented recruitment model. You need to set up a modern one. And that's the failure today. That's why this window's gone poorly. But this is what I'm talking about. They've done this for years. Jose said he wanted this. Ole said he wanted this. They have not set up a proper system that utilizes and identifies targets with regularity, ease, and consistency, where there cannot be discussion because they're going to work. So let's talk about that. Despite all of this, what I do know is that United are building a scouting and recruitment department modeled after Liverpool and City. A huge, huge part of City and Liverpool's perfect recruitment is not scouts. That's old school. It's outdated. Pool and City identify targets almost exclusively off of modeling, data science, and video scouting, down to incredible detail. You should read about it if you get a chance. I've mentioned this before, but what they do is amazing, and it works. It works really well. It's far better than, individually going and watching and making notes and things like that. It's much better. And the recruitment of and hiring of Dominic Jordan as this analyst is for data scientist is for this purpose. He's very high rated. He's very smart. They've just hired another analyst today. It's all pushing in this direction. And the goal for next year is to utilize this season to build the squad up and identify with perfection the targets the way that City and Liverpool do, so that next summer when they go into recruitment, it's totally different. They know how Ten Hag wants to play, they know what he needs, and they have identified the right targets through an actual modern system. That's the goal. And it actually will work well for the Glazers too, because a big part of why you have so much trouble with the Glazers is because the recruitment is a mess. Because it's a conglomeration of a bunch of people's opinions saying whatever the fuck they want. And that's what's happening this year. So I could blame the Glazers, and I do. But imagine you have a team working under you, and they're always arguing and fighting about who to sign, what to sign. This person says this, and you're trying to figure out, who do I back? How do you make your decision? Well, I'll tell you how. The Glazers have their own consultants who advise them, and that throws a whole wrench in the entire thing. From what I hear and understand, it would be much easier to get consensus on recruitment and get approval from the top if they do this model. If you look at City and Pool, there's little to no disagreement about how they recruit. This is the right idea, and even though the old scouts weren't actually that bad and they identified quite a few good targets that were passed up on because of this poor recruitment model we've had, they could never be as good as this modern model. And I know that this sounds like PR, but it's factually true as of now. This is intended to be the last summer done like this, but it shouldn't have been anyway. They should have had a proper recruitment plan in place. They should have done things differently, but they didn't. And it's also partially why they're trying to give Ten Hag whatever they can get him next year. Anything they can do to get Champions League and have funds for what they identify next year, because here's the problem again. If he cannot get Champions League this year, they can do all they want to identify proper targets next year. They won't have the money. If they've got money next season, then they could go ahead and get some really good players in, ideally. A lot of the players people are asking about. I know it's crazy. Why don't they just go get them anyway this year? Again, manager-focused recruitment model. He will only go for players he's familiar with, and they've ignored a lot. And because the Frankie de Jong focus has been so high, we've passed up on 10, 12 other potential good targets who would have improved us at the right positions. It's not blaming Ten Hag. This would happen with any manager if you set them up in this position. However, there are managers who have a bit more experience in this league and in this style of recruitment at a top club that maybe you'd get better results with, but it doesn't matter. Ten Hag can still and should still be the right guy with the right setup. And so that's the disappointment and where the confidence is shaken. Because if they do this wrong, if they load up on these players, it's not going to hurt us now, it's going to hurt us next season. Because when he walks into next season and says, wait, I bought Murata and I bought Rabiot, they're not good enough, but they did help me a little bit this year, and you walk into next summer and say, okay, I want a striker and I want another midfielder. What's the answer going to be? No. You've got Bruno, Eriksson, Van de Beek, Scott, Fred, Rabiot. 6 midfielders and all those youth players. You've got Martial, you've got Murata at striker, you've got all these youth players coming through. Why do you need another striker? You got to sell one. And then we're down to trying to sell players again in order to buy, and it's a mistake. We cannot do this. We'd be better off without them, except for the point of top 4, or except for the point of Champions League. And that is the problem that we have. That is the dilemma, and that is the concern, is that there may be no money next year if he does not get Champions League, but the signings he's making now, even with Champions League, may preclude us from getting signings next year. And that's why it's such a fuck up doing things this way. And it really, has got me very irritated with the whole situation because this is exactly what you didn't need to happen. So that's my rant on what's happened, where it's supposed to go, and the dilemma that we face today. Personally, I'd rather them not sign these players than sign them, because I think we have as good a chance without them, frankly, and I think that it could preclude us from having what we need next summer and doing this on a long-term project, which is what the whole point of hiring Ten Hag was supposed to be. Not about win now, but building something for the long term. So that's my finished rant on that. And now let me talk about transfers. First of all, the Marko Arnautovic deal is off down to fan reaction. It's nothing else. I said in the video yesterday that I know for a fact United were being made aware of it, not just from emails and things to Richard Arnold, which is what reported, but direct calls to representatives at United from people who have contacts there, myself included, to let them know how completely unhappy they were with this, how unacceptable it was, and a lot of threats. And so they pulled out of the deal based on that. It's ridiculous that it got that far, that they didn't check this out, and a huge black mark on the club for doing so. The interest in Gakpo from PSV is real. It is a player that Ten Hag likes. Again, manager focused. It is a player that Ten Hag likes, that is physical, that he believes can cover striker as well. And they are looking at this right now as a potential option. The deal for Rabiot is very likely, and they say it's separate to De Jong, but if it was, then why now? Why wait this long, and why specifically brief he's been a target all summer when clearly he's not? They could have signed him back in June. If you're saying, here's the point about it. If you're signing him now, it's either panic because of the game at the weekend, which is possible, or it's because Frankie de Jong is off. You can't say you've had him on the list all summer and you were planning to sign him when you didn't sign him earlier in the summer. But it's straight out of their playbook to not do it until a deal is off, or until they have an alternate lined up, to not start to brief any sort of negativity on a deal like Frankie de Jong. And it's exactly what I've been talking about Sancho 2020, Thiago, all of that. And honestly, I cannot wait to reveal exactly what United do and how they operate, because it's going to be a bit cathartic given this summer. I don't think they've earned the right to not have these things out there in the open. And, the problem to me that I've said many times, is he's at best a marginal upgrade who wants over $200,000 on wages and will use the no Champions League aspect to negotiate his contract. I know why Ten Hag wants him. Brighton went long against us, and we need more height in the midfield, and that's why Scott stayed on. However, if he and Scott play together, it's horrible, as neither can make a pass. So it'll likely be him for Scott, which means it's Fred and Rabiot, and he becoming deeper to help to counter some of those long balls. But it's a marginal upgrade. It's not a huge improvement. It really isn't, and people need to understand that it's not a huge improvement, and it is going to shut down potential signings in the future and close the gap. We should be looking at much better players. It's also just another 8 in an area where we need 6s. We need deep midfielders who can pass and dictate play. Milinkovic-Savic is a real option, and it's been reported that United are considering a bid. I've said all summer he is a real option. He's been on the radar for a while. He's been in contact for a while. His agent's been trying to get us to buy him for a while. He's a real option, but it is absolutely an alternative to Frankie de Jong. Absolutely 100%. Don't let anyone say otherwise. But here's the problem. It makes no sense again. This is throwing darts at a board. It makes no sense. He's another 8 where his best attributes are getting forward, driving up the pitch, and getting into attacking positions. It makes no sense. You're still sitting there saying Fred is the only player who can play deep if you sign him. And if you sign him and Rabiot, they do not work together. It makes no sense. You're wasting huge positives from both of them in doing that. It's not going to fix the problems. If they buy Milinkovic-Savic and not Rabiot, I would 100% support it. He's a great player. He's very good. He would be very good in the 8 position, add some strength to the midfield to be in support, but he would play likely with Fred. So it's fine, but it does not replace the Frankie de Jong thing. However, I'd be much more for this deal because that is a player who can hold down that position in the midfield for the long term and is worth buying. So that's a deal I would be in favor of entirely, and that could happen. But if it goes alongside Rabiot, it's not going to solve the midfield issue, and then we're going to have added 2 players, and there's no way we're signing a midfielder next summer. So just accept that. Same thing, I would say that news about the Guido guy from Betis is not real. Not a real link. There's nothing happening. Now it's talking about other strikers and forwards. Alvaro Morata is being offered to United as well. And it's just options being thrown out left, right, and center. And again, I'm concerned because those are the type of strikers, unless it's a 1-year loan or a 1-year deal, they should not be considering. They need a top striker next year, and you cannot be buying players like that on multi-year contracts and being stuck with them next year and unable to buy a striker. Right now, if I look at the entire thing, it is chaos. They're throwing out names on left and right. They're looking for everything, and it's because they have no idea, and they've ignored all of the recruitment suggestions all summer. But if there was a deal on the table that makes the most sense, it's Milinkovic-Savic, if they're not getting Frankie de Jong. Now, again, it's not a replacement for de Jong, but Milinkovic-Savic is the only name listed here that likely provides a substantial upgrade to the team that could be in the team next year. If you get Milinkovic-Savic, the next year you can upgrade on Fred. It gives you another option in the midfield, but next year you can upgrade on Fred and get a striker, and you have a really good team probably. You're still needing 2 big purchases, a deep midfielder and that striker and right back and goalkeeper, so you still have a lot of problems to solve next year. And it would be hilarious if this year we signed a center back, a left back, and another 8 as the main things when the biggest problems have always been the 6, the striker, right back, and goalkeeper. And that is a concern to me, but at least Milinkovic-Savic is a player who should be good enough to start for a title-winning team when the team is built right. And so in that way, I support it as a signing. It's the right type. It's good. It's a very, very good, strong signing. So, that's the view on it. Right now, it's a bit of panic and it's a bit of chaos. So who knows who's actually going to come in. They will make signings. I just hope that it's not the wrong ones that cause problems for next year. And I do think Ten Hag will do a much better job with his team. I do think he'll start to play better regardless of signings. I do think things will improve. And on that basis, I really do hope they just do not panic and fill things up with players who aren't going to be here for the long run or who shouldn't be here for the long run but are getting long-term contracts, because we cannot afford that again or we will never make it. Okay? Thank you for watching today. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next video.